Good evening, Who Dat Nation. Special good evening to our Bayou Blitz family. And hey, Happy New Year. This is the first Bayou Blitz of 2023. I am Bob Rose. I am one of your hosts tonight. I am, of course, joined by my partner in crime, and a year older also, Brendan Boylan. And we are joined by former Saints great defensive lineman and a friend of ours and a friend of the show, Willie Whitehead. Gentlemen, Happy New Year to you both. I hope your Christmas and New Year's were both great.
Oh, yeah. It was definitely great being around family. And thank you guys for having me on, Brendan, Bob, man. Just great holidays, and happy that they're over with, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, I know, Willie. I don't know if you stayed in Atlanta, but I know I was in the Atlanta area for the holidays, and single digits in Atlanta is not something I'll ever get accustomed to when I go see my folks. So I don't know about you, but I was cold. I know Bob was probably colder than both of us, but
it was minus 19 degrees up here, guys, and that's the kind of weather I grew up in, sadly.
Oh man, yeah. See, not used to that type of weather. Like you said, Brendan, no. No. Yeah.
And you know what I've done? I've been fortunate to do a ton of traveling in my life, and it always cracks me up when people up here talk about humidity, because I have been down in the Gulf Coast region a great number of times, and I point at them and I laugh and I go, "You guys don't know what humidity is." The people in West Virginia, the Appalachian Mountains, they talk about the mountains. I used to live in the Rocky Mountains, a little bit north of Denver, Colorado. I point and laugh at them, and I say, "You guys don't know what mountains are." I've been spoiled, but that doesn't mean I like the winter. When you guys talk about the humidity and kind of complain about that and are looking forward to fall and your winters, Willie, Brendan, I will trade you your humidity for my winters any day of the week.
I'll keep the humidity.
Yeah, I gotta keep it too.
So listen, folks, we're gonna have some fun tonight, as I think we always try to. We're gonna, of course, talk about the New Orleans Saints, the win over Philadelphia last week, previewing the game against Carolina. But I think all three of us agreed just before we came on air that the first thing that we want to talk about, first of all, let us all send prayers out to Buffalo Bills safety Damar Hamlin and obviously his family. I'm sure if you're watching this show, you know that Damar went down with a very, very scary occurrence in Monday night's game against Cincinnati. It was ruled he basically had a cardiac arrest on the field, had been administered CPR, is now, fortunately, at least according to reports, resting comfortably in a Cincinnati area hospital. He's near coming off ventilation and is in a stabilized condition. So that's great news. But I'll tell you, it was a scary event if you were just watching as a spectator. But Willie, you've been on that field. You've been in those battle lines, and I know the term going to war and going to battle with your teammates, that gets overused. Ryan Clark said it on the ESPN telecast himself, but it's kind of a mentality that you guys have, and you have said yourself that players, current and former, you're a fraternity. So talk to us a little bit about how that kind of thing affected you personally and affects you as a player.
Well, Bob, that's a great question. It really affected me. I mean, it hurt me to the core because understanding, like you said, the fraternity that guys have, regardless of what team that that guys play for, they, a lot of them are still friends, and understand what it takes to be out there. So it really, I mean, it really shook me, because that's my first time seeing, and I've seen a lot, on the field, devastating hits, guys, getting hurt, but not to that magnitude. And that was it was an eye opening, a wake up call that that we would have realized that this game, like, we are really laying out our lives on the field, because any hit could really put a guy in a bad situation. So I know a lot of his teammates. I can tell, like, the anguish that they had, and how they felt for him, especially the guy T. Higgins that he tackled. I could tell, like, he was really going through it, and I understand that, because you don't want to feel like you were the cause of the guy getting hurt, and nobody wants to hurt a guy. We all we played on the field, and guys play on the field. They want to sometimes maybe tackle a guy, or maybe like where he doesn't feel like he wants to okay, I'm I will kind of take it easy as far as what I do as far as on the field.
He doesn't want to see old 98 coming at him again, right?
Right. But, not to the point of hurting someone. Nobody ever, none of the guys ever have an intention of wanting to hurt a guy to where he can't play anymore, to where he's out for the season. Because we don't want, they don't want that happening to them. Because we understand, like, that's our livelihood. Their families are depending. Sometimes families are depending on them to be out on that field. So that's something that really is tough, man. It's just really an eye opener, because in a wake up call, I think, just for a lot of the fans, the players, coaches, that in the league as a whole, that anything, this can happen. Anything can happen. So just to have the awareness. Just to have the awareness. But I think, like I said, I think they handle it. They eventually handle it well, and I think it just needs to be some type of extra precaution taken on the with the players as far as equipment. I think maybe it's something that can be done to put in some extra insulation in the shoulder pads. I know they did with the Teflon helmets, but maybe with the shoulder pads too, some extra insulation to help absorb that shock. Because I know from a medical doctor was saying, from just his analysis of it, that a person can get hit, in a certain part of his chest near his heart, in between heartbeats, where it knocks the heartbeat off rhythm. And that could cause them to go into cardiac arrest. So,
Brendan, before you jump in here, and I apologize, Willie, educate us a little bit. As a player, at least during your playing days, and you had a pretty long career. What kind of medical evaluations take place with a player on a weekly basis, if at all, or during the season? Obviously, you take care of your injured players, but I'm talking about, like, regular medical checkups. Do you guys get them during the year? Is it mandated by the team, or is it kind of your own volition?
Well, we get the regular physicals, during the beginning of the season, and if you're not hurt, you don't really get a regular checkup unless, you're going and getting it on your own. If you feel you're well enough to play, then that's it. But I know a lot of guys, they don't just rely on the training staff for their care. A lot of guys, go to alternative places to get that extra care to help to possibly, accelerate the process, or just get the extra, extra things that they need, so that they can stay out on the field. From chiropractors to, different other alternative places. And even just something simple as just getting, massages weekly. But I think it's very important that guys, because there's only so much that, each team, that the training staff can do. Right. So if they can get some alternative care during the season, that's good. Yeah, it's good. It's good. I know I got a lot of it. Yeah. It's being like glued back together. I got a lot of it. So, and it was a benefit. It was a great benefit. Um, so it was a great benefit. I mean, some guys, they even go buy oxygen chambers.
Yep.
I have this device now that I'm using, and I'm looking to get to the Saints and NFL teams that helps accelerate the healing process. I'm working with the owner of the company now. So, hey, I mean, that's what I'm really into. So that's it's really important, really important.
Yeah, man, we last had you back in August. Man, I can't believe it's been that long. And yeah, you mentioned something a little bit then, especially given the current topic. Talk to our viewers a little bit about that and what you're working with them NFL teams to kind of try to bring into the league.
Oh yes, definitely. Well, we're hoping that like this machine will replace the regular stem, electrical stem that's being used, and it's like the stem to like 2.0. And so what it does, it helps to cut the healing time in half. And it's Tesla-based technology. It's actually a patent invention from actually Nikola Tesla that was passed down. And owner of the company, as in Oregon, he's been, he's created this machine that helps to not only increase more blood flow and control, blood flow in the area, but heals the nerves in the area. So we've got tremendous results. I've been working with guys in NFL Alumni Academy. They loved it. The coaches loved it. One of the top sports performance facilities in the country, working with his athletes in Atlanta, Georgia, and Chip Smith. And so I've been working with his athletes, and he loved it and went down to Alumni Academy because he works with those guys with their performance. So we're looking to try to, I want to hopefully get it to the Saints, the training staff, but anybody that has any type of, nerve issues, blood flow, it saved people from even getting their feet cut off that had a diabetic neuropathy.
Wow.
Any type of issues like that, arthritis, anything, it cuts it in half. And the guys, I mean, you feel a difference after being on it, but just one treatment, you feel a difference. So it's amazing.
Great.
Yeah.
Willie, I wanted to ask you about this. Last time we talked, you talked about some of the things you're doing with the youth and the mental state of some of the youth. So coming from that and talking about the mental state of some of the guys that had to witness DeMar go down, obviously, we've talked about the brotherhood. You've talked about just what it takes to be an NFL athlete. But I think a lot of times from the outside, people put NFL players on a pedestal. They dehumanize NFL players, and they think they're these superhuman people. But all in all, they have emotions and have mental struggles just like anybody else does. When you witness something like that, and I know there hasn't been many injuries, if any injury or moment on an NFL field quite like what we saw on Monday night, but you've certainly had your fair share of seeing guys go down. What do you go through mentally? And in this case, what do you think some of these guys for the Bengals and the Bills are going to have to carry with them, not just through the remainder of the season, but any time they step up on the field throughout the rest of their career?
That's a good question. I'll say I think the main thing that guys that go through a guy's mind is, that could happen to me. And then it's just a wake up call, of the importance of what the player is doing out on the field, and just seeing that their lives, their lives are bigger than the game. We all love the game, but then, you guys think about, okay, like, man, like it's my life is bigger, than the game, and in any moment, like that could be me on the field. So it becomes a wake up call, I think to a lot of guys becomes a wake up call and to really understand the seriousness of what they're doing out on the field, and just to be more aware, being with their teammates and what they're doing on the field. I think it just really it'll help to bring guys closer together and to really support each other, because nobody wants to see their teammate laid out like that. Dealing with that. No player. That's a hard situation.
Hey, listen, the NFL is currently in talks on how they're going to handle the Bills-Bengals game situation. And I've said all along, first of all, the health, and not only the physical health of Damar Hamlin, but the emotional health of every player that was on the field that day, that supersedes any competition of any kind. And I've said that if the league has any concern, any true concern about a player's safety and well-being, that they need to rule this game either as a no contest, not counted in the standings, or as a tie. So that way it equally hurts/helps both teams. How do you feel that the league should ultimately handle the Bills-Bengals game? Do you feel it should be ruled as a tie? Do you think that they should try to figure out a way to get it in somehow?
Well, Bob, you know what? I'll say I agree with you. Yeah, it should be ruled a tie, because the guys are not, I'll be honest with you, guys are not going to be in the right state of mind to play that game again, because they're going to relive that situation.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they're going to be there and see and have images of Damar, falling to the ground, and so it's not going, it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be the same. I think, like I said, for a lot of guys, they will need to get some, probably get some counseling. I think the team should provide a counselor to talk to the guys if they need some even one-on-one consultation to see where their mind, how they're how they're processing that situation, continuously processing that situation, because that's hard to see. That's hard to experience. So I agree with you. They should really rule it a tie and move on. How the standings lay out, move on, because it's hard for players to continue to try to play that game all over again, because you're reliving that experience.
Yeah, exactly. And it's bad enough. And I hate to sound so ghoulish, but life goes on. I mean, these guys are going to have to play a game this weekend against other opponents. And the only other way to fit in, to finish this particular Bills-Bengals game, would be to shorten both teams' week, either this week or the following. And again, that for a league that supposedly preaches player safety and has concern for the well-being of said players, like you said, there's no way that they could realistically expect that. These two teams might very well see each other again in the playoffs as it is, and they'll have to deal with that then. But I think right now, the life of Damar Hamlin and the mental and emotional well-being of all those players who were there on Monday night, it supersedes all competition. You just, and I agree with you. Rule it as a tie or a no contest. Something that a game that was never played, and just let the standings tumble however they're going to tumble.
Yeah. Like I said, I totally agree with you. It's hard for guys to really play at 100% and not have that on their mind, and like I said, just reliving that situation. So some guys might not even want to play.
Yeah.
Play that team. At this time. So yeah.
Brendan.
I just want to echo what we've been saying is thoughts and prayers to Damar and his family. I definitely have to tip a cap to Bills Mafia and a lot of fans from all over the world. Saw that the donations for Damar's toy drive have skyrocketed over $3 million. And I know the Bills have had a long-standing history with that fan base of doing some really incredible things. But to see Bills Mafia along with people from all over the world try their very best to turn this into something positive has been really heartwarming, especially around the season of giving and the Christmas season and whatnot. So I definitely wanted just to take a second to shout out Bills Mafia because that's some incredible work. Again, thoughts and prayers to DeMar, his family, all the players that had to experience that firsthand, and anybody else that's been affected by it. I know for anybody, it's hard to watch that on TV. There was a similar instance in soccer not long ago at the European finals. A Denmark player had a heart attack on the field and had to have CPR as well. So I know for a lot of people that it's whether you're there in person or not, it's a hard thing to see. So thoughts and prayers to everybody who's been affected by it, but wanted to move into some of our New Orleans Saints stuff. Never an easy segue from something that heavy into talking about the New Orleans Saints and football. But the Saints come off of a 20-10 victory in Philadelphia against the Philadelphia Eagles, the NFC leading Philadelphia Eagles. That's not something we saw coming, Bob. You and I both had that as a loss when we talked in the pregame show. But the Saints made life very difficult for Gardner Minshew. The Saints are on a 3-game winning streak. First time this season we can say the Saints are on a win streak. And Cameron Jordan becomes the New Orleans Saints all-time leader in sacks. Willie, you played with a lot of great guys on the defensive line. You've played with a handful of great guys, though you didn't get a chance to play with Ricky and you didn't get a chance to play with Cam. You kind of fit right in the middle of that. To see a guy like Cameron Jordan pass a record of a Hall of Famer, and a lot of people would argue is the second best Saints player of all time behind Drew Brees, from someone who's been on the field, stood in similar shoes, what's it like to see a record like that go down?
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. And Cam is a great athlete. I've met Cam before. Past, and like I say, he's a great guy, and he works hard. He works on his technique and his skill set in the off season tremendously, and it's showing up on the field. It's showing up during the season. But I love to see it, and I love to see guys break records because the game has to continue to progress, and records are going to be broken. So. When I played against, played with a great player by the name of Leroy Glover. That I know even one season he had the league lead in sacks. I think he ended up like 22 sacks, which was crazy of defensive tackle. And he had a high number. And then a Joe Johnson, which is kind of like an older version. Reminds me like an older version of Cam. Cam is the 2.0 version to me. But he's a phenomenal athlete. I can't say enough for him. I'm really proud of him for breaking that record and being in the history book. So
now,
kudos to Cam.
Yeah. Cam and the rest of these guys are going into this season finale against Carolina, eliminated from playoff contention. You played on some wonderful teams, but you've also played on some teams that were in a similar position where you just missed the playoffs going into the last week. Was it a problem staying motivated for those games and practices, either personally, or did you notice a problem with motivation throughout the team in those situations?
Well, I noticed a problem with motivation throughout the team. Because, be honest, the guys, when they don't feel like they have anything to play for, in the postseason, then, they just, they're not as motivated to finish it out.
What do you say to a guy that you see you're still busting your butt? What do you say to a guy that you see in your view has already packed it in for the year?
Well, I know say to guy, like, man, we need to finish strong, regardless. and just get prepared for next season. But we need to finish strong, and it's a time to like as far as even with your stats and doing things, but just finish strong. Like it's more than just you. We want to show up for our fans, and let's just finish this thing strong. I know there's no postseason, but let's finish strong. Yeah.
When they face an opponent this week, an NFC South rival, I'm sure it makes it a little easier to suit up and be motivated because you want to defeat guys within your own division. They are going to be closing out the season inside the Superdome. You brought up fans in a game like this where there really is no meaning. It's you're not playing for a playoff spot and what have you. How much does a team or yourself even individually look at the fans continuing to show up throughout a tough season? How much of a motivator can that be, especially with a fan base like the Houdat Nation?
Well, it's a great motivator because I know we have some of the most loyal fans in the NFL, and it's important to see those fans show up even when we're not making the playoffs and not have the season that we expected to have. But to see them, it's a great it's a great boost to see the fans show up because we draw our energy from the fans. Our biggest energy boost comes from the fans. So if they show up, it's going to help the players play better on the field, especially when they don't have they're not playing towards a postseason. So it's vitally important to have the fans show their support because they give energy to us as players.
I feel like we've been nothing but on a down note today, and some of these things really needed to be talked about. So thank you, Willie, for giving us such an outstanding perspective. But we're just a few days removed from an anniversary of a different sort, and I can't recreate the voice of the great Jim Henderson. But all I will say is, Hakeem dropped the ball. And ladies and gentlemen, our Willie Whitehead was responsible for a big-time sack and a huge forced fumble in the Saints' first playoff victory over the St. Louis Rams in the year 2000. Tell us a little bit about that game and your outstanding contributions. What are your memories coming back from that game?
Oh man, Bob, yeah, that was a great game. Like I said, the Rams were like the biggest show, the biggest show on earth. They were just lighting it up on the scoreboard every game. So for us to pull out that win, that first playoff win, it was something. It was something magical, and so I really felt great to be a part of that, to experience that with those guys and the staff. It's something I never forget, but it was a great experience. And most importantly, the fans. Oh man, the fans were just amazing. Just the support they showed and how happy they were for us to get that win was something else. But like I said, to win that game against one of the greatest team in the NFL at the time is truly something else.
You talked about the fans in that game, and they had a roller coaster ride of emotion themselves. Aaron Brooks is slinging the ball, Saints are out to a big lead, and then you and the defense had to come in and shore it up with some help with the special teams at the end. For you, Willie, where does that rank in terms of moments throughout your career? Is that number one? Is that somewhere in like the 3 and 4 range? Where is that game for you in terms of best memories during your playing career?
I would say it's number one. I would give it probably like 2 in my mind, maybe 2 or 3 in my mind. I think that the number one for me is that first game back after Katrina. Oh man, because that I was so high on emotionally because of the season, the season that we just finished with, being in San Antonio and a new team is born, but there's just a see on the teleprompter all of those, the devastation that Katrina left, and I'm thinking about the fans and all they had to go through, the city of New Orleans and the people. Man, that was the greatest moment of my life for us to get that win against the Falcons, that first game back in the Dome. And we beat them like, 50-0 or something like that, because we were on such a high. But everybody felt it because we felt like we had the city on our backs. We're doing this for the city of New Orleans. This is it's bigger than us, way bigger than us. Because they all saw the people on Tuesday during our time off, and how they didn't know, where the relatives were, and they lost their houses and they lost everything. And all we have to do is win a game. Oh man, we're giving everything we have, for you, for the city. So that was tremendous.
That was the thing. I mean, Sean Payton's first year was 2006, and a bunch of other players in with him. But you were one of the handful of holdovers from that 2005 team where, like you said, you guys were moved around the Gulf Coast just to play games week in and week out. Yourself and the other returning players that went from 2005 into 2006, how galvanized are you as a group, as only the region, and what you got to go through as teammates, Emily?
Well, we were really galvanized because I think it was just a breath of fresh air going into 2006. Because with Coach Payton, he brought a new coach that had a winning mindset and no nonsense mentality, and bringing in Drew Brees and signing Reggie Bush and a number of other players that we got on that team, and just bringing in a championship mentality. It was really a breath of fresh air because after 2005, it was hard because a lot of guys, they wanted to jump ship, and they because it was a tough time, and a lot of guys didn't feel like the league treated us fairly with the number of away games that we had as opposed to home games. So it was just a breath of fresh air to a lot of guys had problems really staying motivated, but the ones that that stuck through, it was a breath of fresh air to get that new energy, that new blood onto the team.
Willie, I don't want to hold you up too long because I know that you're on a little bit of a deadline yourself today. But I did want to ask you this: you played for a couple different coaches during your career. New Orleans Saints this year, a little different first year for Dennis Allen than Sean Payton's first year that we just talked about. There had been some concerns from people in the media, Bob and myself included, about the heart and the character of this team. Over the last 3 weeks, they've certainly shown more heart and more character than we'd really seen all season. What are your takeaways from this year, despite the Saints not making the playoffs? And do you think Dennis Allen should be back with New Orleans next season?
Well, I think barring the injuries, that we've had, and the other guys stepping up and making the plays they need to make. I think it's almost like a kind of a building process, especially when you have a new coach, new head coach. So with Coach Allen, I mean, I would say maybe give him some time to see how things progress. I know a lot of times, like say, assistants and coordinators don't always make the best head coaches. And I know he didn't have this the success when he was in with the Raiders, but I was there when he was assistant D-line coach with the Saints. And he's got a lot of energy. He's was a great coordinator. But I would say I would, just give him some time to see how things progress with him. How he's able to uh, to bring out as far as next season, as far as with the team and the morale and getting those guys to play at a high level, and then see about possibly like looking at maybe things don't really pan out, making some changes. But I say it's always hard when it's when you first get started, because you're having to gel with players. You're having to, this is a new role, so you're having to get guys to to play well together, and that's the biggest thing. With the talent, is the talent playing together, and having that, and just having that connection with the players. So I would say just give it. I would tell everybody in the fans, just give it some time, to see how things progress, going into next season, and then go from there.
Willie, I know you got to get flying. I appreciate you. We both appreciate you spending a couple of minutes with us tonight. First of all, and I know it's in a couple of weeks, but happy birthday to my favorite 98 to do it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I know it's a big number. I won't do the big reveal though. Listen, I know you also do a lot of motivational speaking. Tell our viewers how they can find your work now.
Oh, okay. Well, I have a website, williewhiteheadjr.com, where I have all my my services that I provide, as far as the coaching and the speaking and all the health and healing work that I do. Also, I have YouTube channel, Willie Whitehead Jr., Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, LinkedIn. It's all Willie Whitehead Jr. I think my IG is Radical Expansion. My TikTok is Radical Expansion. Or you look up Willie Whitehead Jr. So I have a lot of great content provided to motivated guys, and I'll be talking about the Tesla machine. I have that on and demonstrating how that works with the Tesla based technology. So I'm really excited about that as a new venture, and it's great things. So.
And folks, Willie does post his work in the Bayou Blitz Facebook group, so make sure that you're a member of that. He'll share it with Brendan and I, and we'll post it on our page as well. But seriously, especially if you're a younger fan, click on the tape of those early 2000 Jim Haslett Saints defenses, man. Look for number 98, because I guarantee you he's always going to be around the ball. That's our friend. That's former Saints great Willie Whitehead. Willie, thank you. Great stuff as always. I hope to do this again with you soon.
Oh, thank you so much, Bob, Brendan. Always a pleasure, man. Always a pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Be well.
Yeah,
Be
thanks,
well.
Willie.
Be well. Thank you.
Our friend Willie Whitehead, always great stuff from Willie. He's such a great football mind. Provided a
great guy.
Absolutely.
And his brain is it's always great to pick his brain about so many different things. Like you said, not just football but life. There was no better person I could think of to reach out to and talk about the Damar Hamlin situation from a player's perspective, from a humanized player perspective. And I hope that Willie made everybody feel a little bit better about what's going on, and opened your eyes. If you're strictly a fan, we're all fans, but if you're strictly a fan and have never played a physical sport, hopefully it was a little bit eye-opening as far as what kind of things can go through a player's mind.
Yeah, I think you and I can both speak for this. You obviously, a pro athlete, and I was the, middle school, high school, did all the things like any kid did. And yeah, you and I'm sure saw, and anybody watching and listening, you have seen a teammate get hurt, whether it's a sprained ankle, whether it's a minor thing, whether it's season ending.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard. It's hard to see anything, even a sprained ankle, seeing guys getting hurt and being in pain.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't imagine seeing what those guys saw on the field on Monday night.
Yeah,
And I have to
and
echo what you said about bringing Willie on. I mean, talk about a perfect guy.
yeah.
Bring on.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, and like you said, yeah, even minor injuries, if they happen to you or they happen to someone you're playing against or with, that affects you bad enough. A major injury, and I went through one myself. A major injury affects you on another level entirely. This man, remember, folks, Damar Hamlin was administered CPR. That is a life-saving procedure. In other words, this could have been such a worse situation, as bad as it was. It could have been a couple magnitudes worse than what it was. I mean, that's what kind of level that we're talking about, and that changes a person. That affects a person probably from going forward. I know when my wife Lauren, got home from work that night, Monday night, I was sitting, watching the news kind of transpire, trying to reach out to my own sources to see what was going on, etc. The first words out of her mouth, as I'm sure it was the first thought out of many parents' mouths, our son, Will, is never going to play football. I could see that mentality. I could see this kind of event being the kind of catalyst to maybe push a couple of younger players, because Damar is only 24 years old, to push a couple of players into retirement. Folks, if that happens, don't judge them. Don't judge them. That's their decision. They have their reasons for making it, whether we agree with it or not. You don't know what a person is going through, and unless you're going through it yourself. And even then, everybody handles things differently. So remember that.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, think about all the guys over the years, Bob, that have retired young, that have been judged for retiring young. Two of the best examples might not be because of injuries, but two of them come from the Detroit Lions. That's Megatron and Barry Sanders, who were both in the middle of their prime, or towards the latter end of their prime when they retired. You look at a guy in my own backyard here in Charlotte, still around a little bit, it's Luke Kuechly.
Yeah.
Who was one of the best football minds we'd seen in a long time, playing middle linebacker. He retired because of concussions. I'm not going to blame anybody for seeing what happened on Monday night and saying exactly what Lauren said. You know what my first thought was when Katie and I talked about it the following day? I thought about my nephew. He's 3 years old. He's going to start playing basketball next week. I can't imagine 3-year-old basketball practice, Bob, just for a good giggle. Imagine 3-year-olds trying to play basketball.
Yeah.
But my first thought was, I mean, he's not going to be a big dude anyway. His parents were small. I could never see the kid who's got all the energy in the world. You got a little one at home. All the energy little 3-year-olds have. I could never see him play football. And I would never want him to. I had my fair share of injuries for like the 3 years of football that I played. And drills that have now been outlawed that I had to do, I'm sure you had to do, and many of you watching and listening went through. And I'm thinking, how in the hell were we okay with doing some of these things? Looking at it now. But yeah, I mean, there's been so much attention brought to CTE and brain injuries over the last couple years. And Willie did a great job of explaining what one of the doctors said was essentially being hit at the imperfect time in the chest area can cause something like that. And the only other injury to that magnitude or moment in a game that we saw someone go down at that magnitude happened in your own backyard with Ryan Shazier. And I'm thinking, I can't blame anybody for going and saying, I'm good.
Yeah.
Football's entertaining. I enjoy football. I enjoyed playing football. I'm sure most of you did play. I can't blame anybody for telling their kids, hey, you're not going to. I finally understand. My parents are watching, which I hope they are. Mom, Dad, I understand why you kept saying that I could not play football until I was 10 years old. Which I mean, Mom, let's be honest. I'm talking straight into the camera at you. You keep telling me, and you've told me my whole life, your brain's not fully developed until you're like 24 years old. So what difference would it made if I was 10 or 8? But I totally understand now why you guys wouldn't let me play, because it's a super, super, super dangerous, barbaric sport.
Mm-hmm.
But we love it. But man, you never want to see things like this happen.
No, and
Unfortunately,
yeah,
it's part of it.
and now I'll talk to my family. Yeah, Mom, Dad. I hope you're watching. Yeah, but folks, Brendan and I make money when you guys watch. We have to borrow money from you when you don't. So remember that. But yeah, Mom, Dad, I understand now. The same things that Brendan just said. I understand why you were so resistant to me, doing certain things. Why I always heard, take care of your body. It's the only one you got. Yeah, man, I wish I would have listened to that advice. The hindsight is 2020. Yeah, but we are, and not just football players. Anybody that chooses this level of commitment to a sport, or most activities, period. But this level of commitment to a sport, especially such as football, the jerseys that we have behind us, Brendan with Delvin Bro, me with Jim Everett. Delvin came back from literally a broken neck. That, by the way, was a life-threatening situation in and of itself. He came back from it to have a pro football career. Fought against every little thing that you could fight against. Jim Everett sacrificed his body to the point that he's, as far as chronologically, he's still a young man. But he'll be the first to tell you he's had multiple back surgeries. He has problems with his knees. His throwing shoulder. From time to time, his fingers. On his hand. And we could go on and on and on. We've had Willie on before talking about some of his health issues he's had since his retirement. These guys are sacrificing themselves, not just physically, by the way, but they're sacrificing family life as well, quality of life in their later years, just to play this sport that we all love, and frankly, a lot of us take for granted. So again, remember that. I understand. You're rooting for whatever team you root for. You're playing fantasy football. You're making bets. But these guys are more than just numbers on a piece of paper, or numbers, names on a piece of paper, numbers on the back of a uniform. They're human beings. They're sons. Their fathers. Their husbands. Their boyfriend. Their cousins. Their loved ones. That they are human beings. So just try to keep that in mind the next time, and it'll happen with all of it. The next time you start yelling and screaming at a TV, remember that there's a human being underneath of that helmet.
That goes for any sport.
Sure.
Watching on TV, being at the game. Trust me. There's definitely times you get, as a fan of anything, you get frustrated, you get mad, you say things, and you turn around and I probably shouldn't have said that.
And Brendan can attest to some of the things I say before we go on air at every single halftime. Every single one. We'll choose to keep that private, because Brendan, I'll probably do it again
in a meaningless game.
Yeah,
in a meaningless game.
Right.
But nonetheless, that's a good transition. Let's talk about this meaningless game coming up. We talked a little bit about the Eagles with Willie. I'll sum it up like this, because we don't have a whole lot of time. And I do want to talk a little bit about some of the things we're looking for, and we'll have plenty to talk about on Sunday as well. But Philly was one of those games where at halftime, you and I were talking. I don't remember if it was before or if we actually got on air when I said the offense is looking okay. I was pleasantly surprised with how the offense played, and you had said something along the lines of, "Yeah, but." Something along those lines of just wait for it to come back to earth, Brendan. And it did in the second half. However, yes, it was a backup quarterback. But if you guys want to go back and look at the tape, We both agreed Gardner Minshew is one of the better backups in the league. I went on the record saying if it wasn't for Trevor Lawrence, I have a gut feeling that Minshew would still be in Jacksonville, either fighting to be the starter or being, a high-paid backup quarterback. And it's not that Minshew was a bad quarterback. I mean, look what he did the week before. There were some miscues. There were some things that you would expect for a guy who doesn't get reps with the first team. But the Saints defense made him look bad.
Yeah.
And it was one of the first times all year that I sat and I was watching the game and I said, wow, this is the defense we've become accustomed to reporting on and watching week in and week out. And it wasn't just the sack numbers. It wasn't just the pick six, which was nice to see. I could not believe that was the first interception by a Saints cornerback all year.
Yeah.
That's the most wild stat ever. But nonetheless, that was in my By the Numbers too. So if you guys haven't read it, go ahead and check that out. But yeah, it's that defensive effort top to bottom was just what we'd grown accustomed to seeing over the last 4-5 years prior to the beginning of 2022. That was an encouraging sign. And part of me wanted to reflect and go, what if they had that all year? What if they were healthy all year? Now, I don't think Marshawn Lattimore was this make or break addition to the lineup. He certainly helps, though.
Mm-hmm.
I still think he's one of the best cover corners, if not the best cover corner in the game when he's healthy. But if the Saints were healthy all year, how different could this have looked? That's the one thing that was going through my mind watching the game, not just on defense, but offensively too. Look, they were playing with 3 backup linemen in that game. No named wide receivers across the board outside of Chris Olave, and Juwan Johnson at tight end. Shaheed, no dissing Shaheed because he's had a really, really good year, and he's had a surprisingly good year. But you could throw that on the list. The average NFL fan has no idea who that is.
Right.
A lot of no-name receivers. 3 backup offensive linemen, Alvin Kamara and whoever else was out there. I'd like to see, Benjamin. Good to see him get at least a couple touches. So, of course, I sat there and said, what if they were healthy? What? It's the what-if game. What if they were healthy? And I think this season would have went a little differently, considering the rest of the division. If the Saints stayed healthy, I think they would have the division. You can go back and nitpick certain games they should have won, and they'd be in a different position as well. But my biggest takeaways from that Eagles game is I finally saw a defense that played like they cared. I finally saw a team that showed a little bit of heart. And it made me really question that maybe this team wasn't as bad as we thought, and injuries played a bigger role than I wanted to admit.
I think that's a big part of things. I think I said it on last night's Under the Dome podcast with Alan Ulrich. There has never been a Saints season, at least in my lifetime, where that echoed the words of former coach Jim Mora more. Those words being could have, would have, should have. What if the injuries wouldn't have happened? What if the offensive play calling was different? Yeah, we get all that. We talk about that weekly. What if the referees wouldn't have screwed them over against Minnesota? What if that defensive breakdowns, late defensive breakdowns against Cincinnati and the second Tampa Bay game, offense squandering so many scoring opportunities against San Francisco. You reverse even one of those games, and this is a team in the playoffs and a team that nobody wants to face. But we can't change any of that, like you mentioned. Hopefully this team will build on that kind of momentum going forward. I don't think there's a lot of changes, roster changes that need to be made, no question about it. But there's no reason to blow up this roster either. And I think over the last 3 or 4 games, this team has shown that. This has been a championship caliber defense for really the last 8 games. The last 8 or 9 games, they sit atop the league rankings and and pass defense, sacks, points allowed, total yards allowed, third down percentage. All of those are major statistics. The Saints have given up under 20 points for 5 straight games. That's one game off of the team franchise record of 6 straight, which was set by the set and tied by the 1991 and 1992 Dome Patrol defenses. Those are historically good defenses that this defense is now being compared to productivity wise. So, I mean, those are major feathers in the cap going forward. Like you said, nobody is sitting here saying it just would have been a Super Bowl team. If the injuries wouldn't have hit and if this happened or if that wouldn't have happened. But I do think that this has a very talented nucleus that can be built on. And if done so the right way, maybe they aren't as far away from championship contention as what we thought around midseason.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of saying that. And I think the really interesting part of all that, Bob, is you said they have a great nucleus and they don't know who their quarterback's going to be moving
right
forward. So as unattractive as this job looked a month and a half ago, talking about potential switching of coaches, whether it be the whole staff, whether it be some, whether it be offensive coordinator. I mean, there's a lot of different ways this can go. And we have a lot to talk about this offseason with all that. But all of a sudden, you look at this team over the last 8 weeks, since week 8, like you pointed out, the Saints are 3rd in the league, I believe, in points allowed. And then you listed off all of them. I mean, they've been fantastic outside of the run. Have not been very good against the run. But other than that, and that might skew some of the pass numbers as well, in terms of yardage and what have you. But the defense has been very good. They haven't forced takeaways, but they've been pretty good. And that is with injuries, key injuries to every level of that defense. Davenport and Peyton Turner, first 2 off my mind. Yeah, you might sit there and say, well, they haven't had good years. People are starting to question Peyton Turner. They've been hurt. Linebacker, Pete Warner was having one of the best seasons anybody could have projected for him. Gets hurt. Now, Caden Ellis came in and has played great football. Yeah. And now you have a good problem because you have 3 linebackers that should be starting on your team next year. You have a good problem. And then you look at the secondary. You lose Marshawn Lattimore, who, again, I just got done saying I think he's the best cover corner in football. Marcus May hasn't played. I'm making stuff up, so don't take my word for this, but it feels like he hasn't played back-to-back weeks at all this season.
That's probably pretty close. He's only played in 9 games this year, so that's not far off.
Pretty accurate. And so that's all to a defense that we just said, looking at the numbers, is among the best in the league over the back half of the season. Offensively, we don't even want to get in those numbers. I don't even want the headache. But again, when that offensive line's healthy and you add Trevor Penning, who should hopefully make a big jump into next year, and you don't really know if you're ever going to get a healthy Michael Thomas, which is just gut-wrenching because when he's healthy, even when he's not 100%, which he wasn't coming back, right? Dude was scary good. Yeah. Scary good. If you get a left pinky finger of Michael Thomas's talent back, that's going to do a world of difference.
Yeah, but even amid all those offensive problems along the line, play calling, Kamara's lack of production, you still had your first round pick, first round pick, Chris Olave, looks like an absolute stud. You have the emergence of a free agent rookie that you mentioned, Rashid Shaheed, before, that came out of nowhere, that all of a sudden solves a lot of questions going into this offseason at receiver. They're going to add depth at wide receiver. There's no question in my mind. But with the emergence of Rashid, you have a definite number 3 wide receiver for sure, and a potential number 2 guy, because he has been that guy the last half of the year. And a position that all of us, I was the harshest maybe, but all of us figured that the Saints would get absolutely nothing out of this year. Tight end. Juwan Johnson has emerged as a legitimate threat, probably not a perennial Pro Bowler, but a legitimate pass-catching threat for this offense. So there are still some positives to take out of that side of the ball, which as a unit has been mostly miserable this year. But you add a quarterback. You figure out the quarterback question. You get a healthy offensive line, and you get some cohesive play calling. And either add a wide receiver or maybe get some health out of Michael Thomas, one of those two. And all of a sudden, you're looking at a pretty productive unit on that side of the ball too.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, let's face it, the defense has played so well that the offense hasn't had to do a lot to stay in games. But I can only think of one game off the top of my head the Saints haven't been in. Right off the top, and it's going to be Arizona, and that was self-inflicted.
Mm-hmm.
But the offense has done enough to be in football games. So you can't project the defense to be good as they've been this year. You can't project that on it next year, right? You just can't. You can't, even if they were terrible, you can't project them to be terrible the next year.
Right. And don't forget, the offense saved their ass in the opening game against Atlanta. The offense saved their ass in a shootout against Seattle, and the offense nearly pulled off an upset against Cincinnati. So, early in the year, that side of the ball, did show the potential of some fireworks. So again, I agree that the numbers have been miserable. The production has been extremely frustrating. But let's not pretend that there's zero talent on that side of the ball going into this offseason.
Absolutely. There are things there to build on. And the one thing that you said about Juwan, or the one thing you didn't say about the emergence of Juwan Johnson that I think is so, so important, is because Juwan Johnson has emerged to be your number one receiving threat at tight end, that did two things. So I guess really two things you didn't say. One, it allowed Taysom Hill to not play tight end. That is so important. I understood it. I think we all understood, well, they need depth at tight end. They need this, they need that. But the fact that Taysom Hill, at whatever point this season, the Saints offense of coaches finally had a bright moment and said, we should really use Taysom Hill the way Taysom Hill was designed to be used over the last several years.
They're one bright moment of the year.
Yeah, they're one bright moment this year. That's been huge for this offense. Even in the misery that it has been, Taysom Hill's almost rushed for 500 yards as a tight end. And then the second thing is it relieves the pressure of trying to force a square peg into a round hole with Adam Troutman.
Yeah.
Who everybody, because of his numbers at Dayton, he's going to be the next big pass catcher, Jimmy Graham. I got to give Sean Payton credit because Sean said it right after he got drafted. I see this guy as an inline tight end. He's a great blocker. He was a Josh Hill replacement.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what he was. And I hate comparing players, but because it was a Sean Payton drafted player, I have to.
Yeah.
That was just plug and play Josh Hill. And Josh had a really good career in New Orleans.
He did.
Very good career in New Orleans. And if that's what Adam Troutman's track's going to be, great. And we talked about this a couple weeks. It might have been a month ago at this point. You don't need Juwan Johnson to be Jimmy Graham. You don't need Juwan Johnson to be a borderline Pro Bowler. You need him to be Ben Watson. You need him to just be productive. Give you 500 to 700 yards a year. 700 at like the very top end of it. You might not get 7 touchdowns again. You might not be the number two in terms of receiving touchdowns by a tight end in the NFL. And that's okay because hopefully you have Mike Thomas back. Hopefully you find some other production from other guys. And if you get Kamara or running mate, I love Mark Ingram. I've defended Mark Ingram for I can't tell you how many years of his NFL career. I love Mark Ingram. But it's done.
Yeah.
Get Alvin Kamara a running mate. Doesn't have to be a Mark Ingram prototype. I said if Eno Benjamin is his long-term running mate, I am thrilled. But if you get Kamara a legitimate running mate and you're able to move that chess piece around again, just like you're able to move the chess piece around of Taysom Hill, real quick, just small rant. If you could figure that out with Taysom Hill halfway through the season, that you can plug and play him like a little chess piece. You couldn't figure that out with the best offensive weapon on the field. All right. That was directly to Pete Carmichael. But if you're able to find him a legitimate running mate and you're able to create space for Alvin and do all these things, I mean, your offense, regardless of who's playing quarterback, pretty good. And I think that's going to be a really interesting one and we talked about it all year, because Jameis is still under contract next year. It's not an impossible to trade kind of contract, but it's also not a contract you necessarily want to eat either.
I disagree. I think the Saints were completely prepared to eat this if he had a bad year. And nobody's saying that Jameis had a bad year, because he wasn't on the field long enough to be given the opportunity. But I think at this point we can all agree, whether you like it or not, we can all agree that Dennis Allen is going to be back. Assuming that Dennis Allen is back, we can also make the strong assumption that Jameis Winston is not his quarterback, because he's had a chance for Jameis Winston to be his quarterback this year, week in and week out, and he kept turning that away. Now, with the exception of the Arizona game, Andy Dalton is not the reason why this team has a losing record. He's been solid but unspectacular, a very limited ceiling, very limited in what you could do with an Andy Dalton on your offense. And you and I have talked about that week after week. So there's no denying that the quarterback position needs to be addressed. Cutting Jameis Winston, and that's what I think that they'll do, it's only going to be about a $6 or $7 million cap hit, which I know sounds like big money, but it's something that the Saints were prepared to eat when they signed him to this 2-year deal. On the flip side, and I know a lot of people wanted Jameis to start this finale against Carolina because it wasn't for a playoff berth. Look, you were only going to start Jameis Winston if he had a legitimate shot at being your quarterback in 2023. He doesn't. What I would like to see is Ryan Ramczyk left last week with an injury. According to John Hendricks, Ramczyk was physically at practice today, but not dressed. So in other words, he didn't practice. You know what Ryan Ramczyk can do when healthy, which is something that Ryan has struggled with the last year and a half now. I say give Trevor Penning his first NFL start at tackle, be it right tackle where Ramczyk was, or move Hurst over to right tackle and plug Penning into left tackle where he was drafted. Get Eno Benjamin some reps. See what that young man can do, because of all and this team is still going to have a ton of roster questions this offseason. 2 of them are going to be, how good is our second number 1 draft pick, Trevor Penning? Now, that's not to say that they're even considering moving on from him. I mean, that's ludicrous. But to see him get game action was big this year. Now you have the opportunity to start him against a pretty darn good defensive line in Carolina. I say do it, because it gives him some valuable starting experience going into this offseason. Eno Benjamin, the running back position behind Alvin Kamara, has to be addressed, no question about it. But like you said, if Eno Benjamin can turn out to be that running mate, that complement to Kamara, that solves a big roster question. So, and there's only one way that you could figure out if Eno Benjamin can potentially be that guy, is give him the rock. So, again, I'm not going to call any game meaningless. We just have Willie Whitehead on. A player is not going to call any game meaningless. This has meaning to every single guy out there. It just might not mean anything in the WL and the win-loss column, but it means something to both of these organizations. Pride, some franchise records are at stake. You pointed this out to Willie earlier, beating a divisional rival, taking a measure of revenge for a loss against them in week 3 too. Those are all meaningful things to those guys in that locker room. However, that job security, like you and I have talked about every week too. A lot of these guys could be playing for their livelihood, for their jobs. So it means a lot to these guys in the locker room during the week, and that will be on the field on Sunday. However, that doesn't mean that you can't tinker around with some different ideas. Trevor Penning at tackle, pairing up Alontae Taylor and Marshawn Lattimore at cornerback, Peyton Turner a lot more reps if he's healthy, Eno Benjamin a lot more reps to complement command. Those kind of things I'm hoping that we see on Sunday.
I do too. Yeah, I would have liked to see Jameis, but you made an excellent point. He's not your quarterback moving forward, so there's no point in throwing him out there. So what you said about the cap hit, yeah, but and 6 or 7 million does sound like a lot because the Saints are in cap hell every year.
Right.
Because they keep drawing this thing out. So it's, at the end of it, you're really looking. Can you really afford to eat $6 or $7 million? And also, if they're just gonna eat $6 or $7 million, I didn't win the Powerball last night. You didn't win the Powerball last night. We'll take the whatever money that Jameis is gonna eat. Just kidding, but no, I think there's a lot of things to play for. I mean, Carolina too. This isn't a game that's going to be a rollover for either team. I mean, you look at Carolina, and I talked about it last week and what Wilkes has done there. And the reports coming out are the fact that Carolina didn't make the playoffs. There's not a strong belief that Wilkes is going to be back. A lot of that could change if they come out and they just kick the tires off of New Orleans in a game that if it wasn't for a miraculous punt, I can't believe I just said that, at the end of that game with Tampa Bay, you're looking at this game, potentially being a win and in situation for Carolina. And I'm sure Carolina, just like we've sat and talked, I'm sure, if we found some Carolina Panther podcasters or Carolina Panther Sports Illustrated writers, they'd say the same things. Well, if we could go back and change one result, we'd be in a completely different boat. And I'm sure there's games like that for Carolina as well. For New Orleans, they're going to be playing incentives. I haven't really looked into all that, but I'm sure there's guys that have incentives in their contract. You brought up the fact that there are records to be broken. One that I still can't believe hasn't been broken is the Alvin Kamara passing Marcus Colston.
Yeah.
But you got a chance to do it at home the last week of the season. Personally, I like seeing franchise records broken at home. It's a little bit more fun. And Kamara is definitely deserving of that record. I know it's been a bad year. He hasn't been utilized the way maybe he should have. Taysom Hill's getting a lot more touches in the red zone than Kamara. That's been an issue for a long time. Dare I bring up Christmas 2020? It should have been 7, right? Can we all admit that should have been 7? Should have been an NFL record. But nonetheless, there are a lot of things that the Saints can come out and do and play for. And this is an audition tape as well. We talked about job security, but we don't mean that just for New Orleans. There's going to be some of these guys that don't come back next year, whether it be because of contracts, whether it be because they just don't fit the system. It wasn't one of Dennis Allen's guys, what have you. And this is just another part of their audition tape for wherever they go next. I look at a guy, one of your guys, Caden Ellis, not that he's on an audition tape, but I mean, this is another guy who's had an outstanding year. If you're able to end it with a bang, I mean, you're going to have a really legitimate shot of saying, like, why am I not starting?
Yeah.
And you hate trade demands and all that. I personally hate it.
Well, you know what? Caden Ellis is a free agent, remember?
So there you go. I mean, he's going to be playing that, whether it's here or whether it's somewhere else. There's just another part of his audition tape, and he might have played himself out of New Orleans.
Oh God, I hope not. I've not acknowledged that in any articles yet, but it's in the back of my mind. At the very least, I think of the list of Saints unrestricted free agents going into this offseason, Marcus Davenport is the biggest name. Caden, and I don't think New Orleans is going to offer him a big. He's going to get big money, but it's not going to be in New Orleans.
And that's why I think
Caden. I think Caden Ellis is the most important player to re-sign of anybody on that list. You look at guys like DeMario, Cam, they're going to be 34 before next season kicks off. They're carrying big contracts. They're going to be rumored to be potential cap casualties, despite the fact that both are still playing at a high level. Is this their last game in a Saints uniform? And God, I hope not for both of them. I think they still have so much left to give. But those are questions that are going to be asked. Tyrann Mathieu, Marcus May, they were signed to 2-year contracts. I think it's safe to say that both have disappointed greatly this year. Can either one, and I doubt May even plays, but can Mathieu finish the year strong and make Saints coaches think, you know what, maybe maybe he does fit into our plans as safety. What about on the offensive line? These guys, they're going to be playing with backups. We mentioned Trevor Penning potentially getting his first start, hopefully. But Landon Young, Calvin Throckmorton, Josh Andrews, those guys, it would be great to see those guys have a strong outing in the trenches to make the Saints feel a lot better about their offensive line depth. None of those guys are going to be projected starters for this team in 2023. But as we've seen with the New Orleans offensive line for seemingly the last decade, how important is depth at that position? I mean, all those things are things to keep an eye on, as this team takes on Carolina on Sunday.
Absolutely. And we will have a lot more to talk about this game on Sunday. Man, you and I are going to have a great off season talking about loads and loads and loads of different things. But before we sign off and whatnot, I have news on our giveaway. So for you guys that have stuck around, at least you YouTube people, here is how you get to enter the giveaway. Ready? 2 parts, really simple. I'll remind you guys on Sunday as well. We're going to be giving out these at the end of the month. I know you got a whole month to get in. You're only going to be able to enter one time. I'm not going to do any of that, multiple entries. If you do this, and this, we're going to keep it really simple, because the simpler it is, the less of a headache it is for Bob and I to pick winners. It's going to be really easy. All you guys got to do is you guys are going to comment in the YouTube comments for an entry by telling us whether it be, on a Wednesday or I guess you only get one more Sunday. So you get Sunday or any Wednesday between now and the end of the month. All you got to do is comment that obviously you're watching. If you're commenting, you're watching. Your favorite moment of the Bayou Blitz this season. You could pick an interview. You could pick something ridiculous that I said. You could pick something smart that Bob said.
You could tell us which one of us is cuter. We could do that.
We don't care. Just say whatever your favorite moment is. Since Bob and I
care. If people think I'm the cuter one, I care.
Okay, yeah, well, okay. You guys want to make Bob happy? Comment that Bob's cute. No, but whatever your favorite moment is since Bob and I relaunched in July, and then you're just gonna comment done. So you're gonna say here, watching. You're going to give me your favorite moment. You're going to say done, all in one. And then I'm going to give you guys an email to shoot an email for your entry. So I have to see that you've sent me an email, and I got to see that you've actually commented. And the nice thing about YouTube is it keeps all these comments. So if you send me an email and you don't comment, I can go back and be like, I'm sorry. Who am I picking on today?
Right. So if you say that Bob's cuter than Brendan or Brendan's cuter than Bob, that comment will live forever.
Forever on the internet.
Forever
on the internet. So be kind if you're going to be the person that says Bob is cute and whatnot, but then you don't email me, you're not going to win. That's going to be for a Funko Pop. So I will give you guys the email and everything. I'll actually drop it where you see the Bayou Blitz podcast, Saints Miss Playoffs, that banner that I can just pull in and out like that. I'm going to throw it up there on Sunday, so you guys will have the access. We'll start taking entries on Sunday. And that's just a little thank you for you guys hanging out with us throughout the year, Bob. This is episode 24. So 24 weeks now, you and I have done this show.
Okay. I was going to say it's 25 by my count, but I forgot you were on the road and otherwise indisposed.
Yep, gone for a week. Yep. So Kyle came in and filled in. So Chad said today's podcast was my favorite moment. Well, thanks, Chad.
Thank you.
That was very nice. We appreciate the kind words. But Bob, where can everybody follow you and your work? Not just for week 18. That's weird to say. Still not used to that. Not just for week 18, but for the incredibly busy offseason we're going to have as well.
And we are going to have a busy off season. We're going to give you daily pieces, both editorials, analysis, and breaking news, all off season long. And if you followed the Saints News Network at Saints News on Twitter, for a number of years, you know that we do that and we're true to our word. I can be followed over on Facebook, Bob Rose, ROSE. I'm on Twitter at Bobby R2613. Yeah, it's funny. Before the original incarnation of the Bayou Blitz, it was all done through radio, so you couldn't see our faces. I used to say when logging on, when introing with Kyle T. Mosley, I used to say that I was the best looking guy in Saints media. Now that Brendan and I are doing video, I can't say that anymore, so I don't. So if you want to give one of our egos a boost on that YouTube link, feel free. Feel free. Our significant others, we won't get in that much trouble, I don't think. We'll see.
Neither of us need the ego boost, though. Our heads are pretty big as is.
It says you. I always need the ego boost. Listen, first of all, thank you to our good friend and Saints great, Willie Whitehead. He's a Saints great on the field. He's a Saints great off the field. He was one of so many great guests that we had on this past season. Willie's going to be rejoining us this offseason. I guarantee you that. We're going to have a lot more guests too, both repeat and new ones that just scheduling didn't work out with us during this past year, but we're gonna have an exciting product for you this off season. And you guys have done such a great job of making this your product, of making your product, your show grow, and we love you for it. The way that you can continue, ways that you can continue to make this grow, talk to it, talk us up, talk it up. Talk your show up to your friends, family members, other Saints fans, other NFL fans. And remember to point them towards the Bayou Blitz Facebook group. I want to see more interaction in that group. It has good membership. I want to see more interaction. This off season, you guys have been great in building that up, make it continue to grow, and make our Bayou Blitz Twitter page at Bayou Blitz Pod. That's still in its infancy, but it's growing fast too. If you're a Twitter person more than a Facebook person, take that one over. Make that one take over the Twitter airwaves. You guys have done such a great job, and thank you so much for it. Brendan and I have so much more to give you, and I promise you we're going to give you everything we got.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Lots of fun things coming up this off season for me. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at BT Boylan. Little personal news that's fun because I can finally say it is at the end of this month, I will be launching my podcast network in conjunction with my production company, Bottom of the Mug Productions. We're going to have a multitude of different things going on. We're going to have sports, we're going to have music, we're going to have mental health, lifestyle, just a place where essentially if you need a podcast for anything, you're going to be able to find it. So, give us some time to grow, but really excited to launch that coming up. Had a long 2 years of trying to figure out what I wanted to do next with the production company after the movie came out. And so this is kind of what we've settled on, and had a lot of good conversations with people. I'm excited to get this thing up and running. That doesn't mean I don't hang out with you guys though, because you guys are super, super important. I'm super thankful.
You worried me. I was hoping I wasn't going to have to start auditioning people to sit in for you when you hit the big time.
Nah, I'm not like that. I gotta remember the day one people. I'm not anywhere yet. Don't let those trophies behind me fool you. I'm not that special. But no, I'm really excited to launch all that. I'm really excited to see what we're able to do. And obviously the production company has sponsored this show as well. So you guys are just going to be a part of that family as well. So really excited for all that. Really excited for what we got to bring you guys this off season, because, last season, I think a lot of us said this is going to be one of the most crucial off seasons in Saints history. I think we can kind of repeat that because at this point, I don't want to say the window's closed, the window's closing. I think that a lot of that terminology was used towards the end of Drew's career. But even more so now, it's not that the window is closing. It's about the nucleus is at a point where you either have to throw different strands of DNA into the nucleus and change it, or you got to blow it up and let it die. And that's kind of where we're at. It's a weird spot because you asked me a month ago, of where this team was, I would have said, like, just let it die. Like, blow it up and let's get
Let that atom go nuclear.
Exactly. And now, after 3 games of heart, tough victories, different ways of winning, I'm sitting back and it's like, well, I think these guys have a little bit more to show than maybe what we're giving them credit for. And if they make it 4 in a row, we're going to be having a completely different conversation going into the offseason. We're going to have some great guests that are going to be able to talk about their own personal experiences with the Saints in the NFL and what off seasons really look like for players, because I think we all have different ideas of what that actually looks like. So for my buddy Bob Rose, I'm on a different side of the screen today.
You are. It's weird.
Yeah, I don't like it. For my buddy Bob Rose, I'm Brendan Boylan. Thank you guys so much for tuning in for another edition of the Bayou Blitz podcast. We'll see you guys Sunday for the final pregame show of the 2022-23 season. Until then, find peace, spread love, practice positivity. We'll see you on Sunday.